Lockbox, Chapter 17. Sara and Aristian entered a structure that Aristian called the domus. They progressed through its hall. It had low walls to form a shaded walkway from the sun. As Sara passed through, she saw a large opening in the roof, and below a receptacle carved into the ground made of stone, filled with water. In front of her, she saw a partition as she approached. She ran her hands along the fine wood. She recalled watching documentaries about Roman homes, and it all looked very amazing to her. At this point, she stopped questioning the realness of her dream journey. Yes, she was dreaming, she understood this part, and in addition, something of a vision had been incorporated. I'm here, she whispered to herself as she followed Aristian deeper into the domus. Really here. This is the vision part. Aristian, overhearing Sarah's astonishment, merely shrugged. He no longer laughed over her amazement. Come, he said, meet everyone. This is the atrium. As she entered the atrium, she saw a man, very aged, reclining on his side just beyond the table, and on either side of him two young men. One of them seemed to be writing, and as she looked at him, he smiled at Sarah. The aged man said to the young man writing, Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. After he dutifully recorded this statement, the young man looked up. And is this why it is said among the faithful, you will not die? The faithful spread many wishful things that the Lord never said, Prochorus. He merely said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? The important thing is the if, nothing more. The aged man looked up. Ah, Aristian, you've brought her, the daughter of our beloved. He gestured to a staggered Sarah. Come, daughter of the beloved, sit. I see in your visage how you have many pressing questions. Aristian guided a stunned Sarah to her seat in front of the aged. As she did so, he said, this is John, the aged. John said, ah, how are we to put her at ease, Prochorus? Sarah knew these two from a memory of an icon she remembered seeing in Father Seraphim's St. John's the Evangelist Church. They seemed to fit the image of that icon. She had dreamed what she studied. It had to be, so she thought, but she didn't say this out loud. She just took the dreaming configuration as part of the reality she now participated in. The young Prochorus could not be very far in his teens, she thought. He had a maturity to him. His bright red hair and flashing green eyes drew her in. Red freckles around the sides and base of his light brown nose added to the boyishness of his expression. As he spoke, she could hear the youth in his voice. Tell her one of your stories. One of my stories, the aged John chuckled. Sarah sat silently, too awed to speak. Is this really him? Apostle John? The one Donaldson paid her to discover? Is this the man who penned the famous gospel tract which changed her mother's life, or worse, ended it? Sarah tried to shake herself out of the latter thought. It had struck her suddenly, reminded her of how much her mother changed because of this John, or that other one, the so-called the elder. It reminded her of the purpose which brought her to this dreamscape. How many Johns were there? She continued to be speechless in these reflections. I met the Apostle Paul once or twice, a long time ago, began John the Age. One time he came to Jerusalem, he and Barnabas. There was a famine back then, and our Jerusalem church suffered greatly from hunger. They brought provisions that sustained our little children there. He paused, smiling gently at Sarah. Our beloved Jasmine, your mother, she took this story very seriously. It infected her with a godly determination. John, the aged, spoke as if he knew Sarah's mother intimately, and Sarah thought that had to be impossible. There is no way John knew her mother the way it sounded to her ears. Could he really know her mother? Would dreams have such power? He was just a conjuring from an iconostasis she saw in the sanctuary of a church. Is this a vision or a dream? A reality or a delusion? Configured from pain and mourning? Sarah kept listening quietly. She didn't like the word infected. It seemed to imply John the Aged knew about Jasmine's sickness, the disease which ultimately would take Jasmine's life. Finally, Sarah couldn't keep silent. She asked, "How could you possibly know my mother?" Her mother had meant everything. "Tell me," she demanded in a rush, feeling weird making demands to an imagined character. Ariston interjected, "The apostle can know a lot of things. That doesn't make him responsible for them. Your question implies accusations." John the Aged waved gently at Aristian. "It's okay, Aristian. I am not offended by this tone of hurt." The young prokurist offered, "Don't forget, we've been expecting this challenge." "My protectors," John the Aged chuckled, gesturing to Aristian and Prochorus with his wrinkled hand. "I tell you, daughter of Jasmine, the story the Apostle Paul shared with me and I shared with your mother is not the cause of your mother's earthly demise. Nor is it, shall we say, blameless. Nothing in our lives is blameless. Everything is connected to the story of paradise, emanates from the first surrender, and reveals the two pillars, the reality, which is our problem, and the reality, which is our secure. The spirit blows where it wills. You hear the sound of it, but you cannot say in what way that it comes and to where it goes." Sarah responded with an unintended but reflexive emotional scorn. "Philosophy. I'm not much of a philosopher. I don't think you are real. I think this is a dream, and I'm dreaming of you. You are nothing more than a religious painting, masquerading as a real person conjured by my subconscious. So you can't know my mother the way you say. Tell me this story that you claim to have shared with my mother." John the Aged paused. For the first time, Sarah could see John's age lines in his olive Semitic face, accented by the iconographic bronze hue and the weariness in them. She at last noticed his thin white hair that only partially covered the exposed crown of his head, and the deep set of his dark eyes, how they had a joy and a sorrow alternating in them. They seemed very real, despite her assertions about being in a conjured illusion. "Truly, I tell you the truth," began John the Aged. "Your mother did not suffer death because of the good news. The good news comforted her in her sorrows, her real life sorrows, that she felt she was never able to give you a better life. It hurt her tremendously, and there was another web that bound her. Of this we cannot now speak. My mother never said to me the good news, as you called it, and it never did anything to soothe any suffering." Sarah leaned forward. "And what do you mean, bound? Tell me about this web." John the Aged leaned back. "Later. You are far from prepared to comprehend the magnitude of your mother's alteration. You will return after you have adjusted." At that, Prochorus stood up. "It's time to take her back, Aristian." Aristian stood up too. "Right. Let's go." Sarah hesitated. Wait, take me back?" "It's time to go. You will come back." Aristian touched her arm. "In time you will learn the means and the methods." "Don't touch me," shouted Sarah. "My mother died because of you. You have to tell me." "The apostle is weary," Prochorus enforced. "Can't you see he is aged?" "There will be time later to tell this story. Go. You are not safe to stay any longer. Any error in your mind, and you will be floated into oblivion." Aristian again grabbed Sarah. "He's right," he insisted forcefully. "You must return to your own, now." Sarah demanded, "What do you mean, return to my own? This is my dream." insisted Procurus. It's time to go. You are a novice. It is not safe for you to stay too long. Aristian pulled Sara out of the atrium, leading her out of the hall into the street. It had turned dusk, and the nighttime moon illuminated Ephesus in a thin glowing lid of mist. If we hurry, the portal still may receive you back. But quickly, come. He pulled Sara with such urgent force that she had no choice but to run beside him to keep from being dragged. Her mind spun dizzily, going over what she had just learned. Her mother had deep sorrow. Her mother was bound. Sorrow about what? Bound in what way? This news jolted Sara. The dream's images raced through her mind. The ancient Ephesus, its crowded streets, the people in their colored togas, the reality of the blue sky and hot sun preceding this night moon. John the Aged reclined in front of her. All these images blurred her sense of the moment, so much she didn't even notice Aristian brought her back to the location they first met and waved goodbye to her as she stepped into a swirling pillar of stone. Aristian called the portal. It took only a slight, insistent shove by Aristian to mechanize her steps, and he shouted as he shoved her. He shouted, Chokma! Then Sara felt herself lying down, as if she were on a soft cushion. She opened her eyes and found herself lying curled up on her black leather couch and with the lockbox nestled still in her midsection, just as before she began her dream. Night clothed her trailer home in Lafayette, just as before. Her conversation with Father Seraphim fresh in Sara's mind, just as before. She looked up at the clock on the wall and saw the minute hand had only moved barely 5 minutes ahead from where it had been when she began to dream, showing it was 6:05 p.m. In just 5 of her minutes, she had dreamt and traveled a millennia away, configured from the memory files of her mind to an ancient Roman Empire city to speak with a relic among its inhabitants. She had visited with an ancient Christian, a philosopher of apostolic fame, written about in books she researched in Norland Library. And all the time she knew it to be a dream, but was it reality or hallucination? Was she on the verge of madness? She lay back down, daring to fall asleep again, and she did. Lockbox, Chapter 18. Chokma rang in Sarah's ears as her eyes opened and she sat up, gathered her senses, looking hungrily at her living room surroundings, the black leather reclining chair, the four-legged chair with its cushioned footrest, the TV dinner trays next to each piece of furniture, the lone living room window of her trailer, hearing the soft, soothing hum of the refrigerator in the nearby kitchen. I'm home, she whispered. The sensation of being awake had never felt so acutely welcomed. She needed the confirmation of her waking life. She had fallen asleep on the couch. She had dreamed, and the memory of the dream was still there, lingering clearly. She could still hear the talismanic enchantment of Aristian's invocation as she moved into a void between realities. Chokma, Chokma, clearly had importance. It had power that Aristian seemed to wield by saying it. Standing up, Sara walked over to the living room window and pulled back the dark curtains covering the lone window. The bright blue Colorado sky greeted her. The trees scattered around the trailer park outside, with their fall branches bare, jutting in various directions, added certainty to Sarah's physical presence back in Lafayette, Colorado. There is no place like home, she whispered playfully, feeling a great relief to be awake. As she stood staring out her lone living room window, the disturbance of being in an alternate dream reality slowly calmed. New emotions took hold of her heart. a numinous response, an excited response, each of these which tiptoe on the edge of fear transformed into a sense of Alice in Wonderland attraction. Could she repeat what she just experienced? Did she discover a permanent conduit to realizing the transformation of imagination into other concrete worlds? Sarah stepped back. If she could in some way control the content of her dreams, might not other people have the ability? People with nefarious motives? Her reality would not be safe if such a conclusion proved true. She whispered to herself, a vision. That's what I had. According to Father Seraphim, visions were involuntary intrusions controlled from outside. She turned and looked at Jasmine's gift of the Lockbox. It cradled on the couch silently, unmoved, unchanged, white and purple, solid, present in her real world. You, she called out to it, you are doing this, aren't you? She walked over to it and lifted it off the couch. You took me there. At the same time, no, not take me there. I dreamed all of it, except for the vision part. Are you the tool which has given me these visions? Mother, too? Sarah shook her head. Nah, can't be. For a moment, she thought about opening it, but then a fear blew through her. She jerked and glanced around the living room. Mother? Reflexively, she started down the hallway to her mother's room, to the dresser drawer. There she pulled it open, gazed upon the silver key to the lockbox, and set the lockbox down next to it. She stood there for a long while, wondering, contemplating impossible things. She spoke to the lockbox. I saw Aristian, the guy mentioned in the history books, and Prochorus, the so-called scribe of the Apostle John himself, though he is called John the Aged. Slowly she closed the drawer and turned away. Or, I'm losing my mind. She left Jasmine's bedroom, closed the door behind her, and walked to the kitchen, her mind racing with wild reflections. If these dreams and visions were happening to her, if every time she slept with the lockbox in her hands, she was whisked off to ancient Ephesus, that is what Aristian called it, then what purpose lie behind all this? There had to be a purpose, because if the closed lockbox had a power to make her dream dreams of another reality, then what would opening it bring to her? This question argued strongly for her to preserve the status quo, refrain from opening her personal Pandora's box. Once in the kitchen, Sarah brewed herself a cup of coffee, Pete's French roast dark. She poured honey cinnamon creamer into her white mug and sat there, sipping, thinking, hoping, and having that sense of terror one feels when one is in a wood and stumbling upon a bear. She spoke her thoughts out loud. The elder. No, no, I'm not sure. Aristian and Prochorus referred to him as the aged. Sarah took a deep breath, another sip of her coffee drink. A hand moved gently over the smooth white mug, tracing the thoughts in her mind. A voice followed. It is a real vision, and it is a real dream. Okay, go with that. Say that. Believe that. Somehow I am dreaming real life. The stone road, the colorful togas, the purples and golds, the people, the Roman people, and the seaport, and the ancient temples, and the smell of sacrificed meat in the air, and yet, I inexplicably could understand them because it was my dream and someone else's vision. Maybe? She dug into her pocket and pulled out her iPhone. I need help understanding all this. She stared at the black phone in her hand. She had reality in her hand, or did she? Could reality be measured by lesser and greater, dream or vision, ghost or spirit? Shaking her head in wonder, she knew only one person within her reach could help her unravel these questions. I will call Father Seraphim. A couple hours later, Sarah arrived back at St. John the Evangelist Church. The red brick church building, with its narrow narthex glass window view of a small town's stone sidewalk and street, the old world buildings which surrounded it. The red brick fire station across from it, on the opposite corner of Highway 287. The oversized drugstore parking lot that Sarah always thought was too small for their little Colorado town. You could walk the entire town's main street from one end of Lafayette to the other in about 45 minutes. Once inside Father Seraphim's office, Sarah told him all that occurred and how she gathered the lockbox, fell asleep on the couch, and visited Ephesus. She unhesitatingly poured out her questions. Sarah had no fear of seeming foolish. Father Seraphim had given her plenty of license to be completely comfortable. Am I losing my mind, Father Seraphim? How should I take all this? Could it possibly be this is happening because of the lockbox? I don't think you are losing your mind, responded Father Seraphim confidently. There are many kinds of reality. Our universe may feel like it's all alone, a lumbering cosmos, flying endlessly forward from the Big Bang to nowhere but to its own self demise. This is what many materialistic scientists believe today and what they want human society to believe. However, very few metaphysically trained scientists believe this way about the nature of our universe or reality. Metaphysics? Sarah repeated the term, shaking her head negatively. I've heard the word before. I can't say I truly know what it means. Father Seraphim chuckled. Of course, why would you? Our education system has moved far away from this knowledge of the nature of reality, of essence, of what the ancient fathers called the ousia of things. It's rare to find anyone who knows what the term means, and rare still to find someone who, if they know anything about it, will not turn their noses up with a superior sense of advancement. Materialistic scientists disdain the term as medieval, seeing metaphysics as akin to quackery, witchcraft, or alchemistic sorcery. Sarah shuddered. Oh, well, that doesn't sound good. I'm a believer in science. Science has rewarded mankind with vaccination against disease, the means of flight, a longer lifespan. What you say is true. No doubt materialism is successful because it harnesses the laws of creation. The priest leaned forward in his chair very seriously. For a long moment, he stared at Sarah with his serious gray eyes. Sarah thought she could see light bounce off them, or glittering in them. The sight made her inhale in anticipation of what the priest would say next. I told you before, he began, the difference in your case between a dream and a vision. A dream is usually mixed with unresolved issues deep in the subconscious. They tend to operate as voluntary affairs with variant, irreconcilable images, with discordant messages. I remember you saying that, confirmed Sarah, like a librarian going through very old, long forgotten files that had been locked away, gathering dust. Father Sarah leaned forward in his chair again. Good. Remember that. It will come in handy for you. A vision is usually a completely involuntary affair. It is not from within you. A vision comes from outside. Sarah sat up in her chair. This very thing confound me. On the one hand, if what I am going through is a vision, I should feel comfort at being in a non-dream state. But I don't feel comforted. Not totally. Father Seraphim nodded gaily. Your discomfort is reasonable. What you experience, you rightly called a vision and a dream. What you described involved two different natures. One, ephemerally remembered, and the other, living, a present reality of the here and now. It can also be of something which is to come later on, or it could be a past event. This is an example of metaphysics. What is metaphysics? It is the most abstract branch of philosophy and theology, dealing with the first principles of existence, including concepts like existence, being, causality, substance, time, and space. It is the organizing and systematizing truths discovered by the science of logic, which lie behind all realities, all natures. Wow, laughed Sarah somewhat weakly. This is a mouthful. The important and simplest thing to remember is metaphysics is the study of existence and forms of existence. Ah, Sarah sighed. Now that sounds understandable. You think so? Sarah traced her fingers on the priest's desk, thinking out loud. The concrete part of my dream is a real existence. That existence is a vision. It exists. It either happened or is happening. I can treat it that way. On the other hand, my dreams really exist, but not in the same way. So I am really experiencing the hard stones of the Roman road in the given vision. But my image of Aristian is not given from outside of me. It is made up from memories deep in my subconscious. But they are not him, really, because I've never seen him or a description of him. Father Seraphim's gray eyes narrowly focused on Sarah. He had a gaiety in his vision, and at the same time the deep emanation of a very high intellect. Calmly, like a sailor steering his ship through a storm, he interjected. Normally, one would dismiss the entire thing as an illusion. However, if you look at this from a metaphysical perspective, it is entirely possible you are experiencing two different existences, one more real than the other, taking place in the same space and time. Sarah's dark eyes saw the priest again for the first time. Was it possible to see a person anew more than once? How could she ever doubt his sincerity, his authenticity, his candor? Total satisfaction is what Sarah felt sitting here, listening to the priest philosopher. She mentally thanked her best friend Rhonda for having suggested the seeking out of a third party to guide her through this experience. And as she sat there silently, all this information the priest supplied, the definition and explanations, confirmed to her that she could continue to journey deep into her dreams or visions. Somewhere in these visions and dreams there existed the truth about her mother, the facts which Jasmine had kept from her daughter. If she had never noticed how influential Father Seraphim must have been to her mother before, she understood now more powerfully his affect. Thank you, Father, for strengthening my resolve. It is a good feeling to believe in my mental stability. I'm not crazy, am I? No, you're not crazy, responded Father Seraphim. He leaned forward and gently touched her hand again in a comforting way that had been resting on the desk. You are being gifted, he paused. You are also faced with a challenge. I cannot say what the challenge might be, but one doesn't have visions without intent behind them. There is deep purpose at work in you. Deep purpose. Wow, that's extra. Thanks, Father. That phrase is going to live rent free in my head. Father Seraphim quickly explained. We do not yet know what role your subconscious will play in all this, how much of you is resistant. And we do not at the moment know where the visions are coming from, who is orchestrating them, and why. This is something only you can discover. Are you familiar with the prophet Joel? Never heard of him, Father, responded Sarah. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit in all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. Father Seraphim stopped. This is a quote from the prophet Joel. He was a Jewish prophet from the 9th century BC. Wow, that's way back there. Indeed, visions and dreams were prophesied by him way back then. The Apostle Peter thought the time had come in about 30 AD, and we've been in this time period now for over 2,000 years. Could you be experiencing this prophetic ability? It's a question. I'm not giving you an answer. Sarah nodded her understanding. Thank you, Father. Sarah never called him Father with any feeling before. Now she felt like he was her protector, and her use of the term filled her with hopeful feelings. She wondered if Father Seraphim sensed the emotions in her words. Was that a slip of the heart, a change in feeling he noticed? Sarah was still an unbeliever, yet she had a newly found respect for her mother's priest. Sarah suspected her mother would be happy at this small evolution. She grew excited again. Brilliant ideas to ponder, Father Seraphim. I will just have to discover where all this leads. She stood up with determination. I will report back what I discover. I'm sure you will be as eager to hear of my dream vision research results as I am to live them.